I used to think people exaggerated stories like this. You know the kind. Late night Reddit threads, TikTok horror clips with distorted faces in the thumbnail, urban legends people repost at 2 in the morning because they can't sleep and want to feel something crawling around in their chest before bed. The Smiling Man. Yeah, that one. Back then, I thought it was just another internet myth people kept alive. Because the world gets boring after midnight. I don't think that anymore. And if you're listening to this alone right now, maybe don't look out the window for a while, because the worst part about that night wasn't the way he smiled. It was the way the city seemed to move around him like it already knew who he was, like it had seen him before, and maybe it had. It happened 3 years ago. Late October, Chicago. A Thursday night bleeding into Friday morning. 2:13 a.m. I remember the exact time because I checked my phone the moment I saw him. I just finished a double shift at a warehouse near Fulton Market. 12 straight hours moving inventory while some broken radio kept cycling through old Pearl Jam songs and weather warnings nobody listened to anymore. My back hurt. My hoodie smelled faintly like cardboard dust and cigarette smoke from the guy working the loading dock beside me. I was exhausted. That deep kind of exhaustion where your thoughts stop sounding like sentences and start feeling like static. My car was in the shop that week. Transmission problems. So I'd been taking the blue line downtown and walking the last few blocks back to my apartment near Well Street. Usually the city still felt alive at night. Not that night. That night felt paused. The sidewalks were wet from an earlier rainstorm. Streetlights reflected off the pavement in these long streaks of dirty yellow light. Steam rolled out from a vent somewhere beneath the street, drifting low across the intersection like the city itself was breathing in its sleep. No wind, no voices. Just the distant hum of traffic somewhere far away, and my footsteps, that was it. I remember passing a closed liquor store with metal shutters pulled halfway down over the windows. One neon beer sign inside still flickered weakly, buzzing, struggling to stay alive. Dark light, again for some reason, I kept looking at that sign longer than I should've. Like my body already knew something my brain didn't. I adjusted my backpack and kept walking. Crosswalk signal beeped somewhere ahead of me. Those sharp little electronic chirps echoing through empty streets. I checked my phone again. 2:14 a.m. No new notifications, battery at 11%. I shoved it back into my pocket and turned onto LaSalle. That's when I saw him. At first, I honestly thought he was drunk. He was standing maybe half a block away under one of those old sodium streetlights. Tall, thin, wearing what looked like a dark suit or overcoat. Hard to tell from that distance. And he was moving. Not walking, not dancing either. Something in between, slow, twisting motions. Jerking side to side in these strangely smooth little steps like his body was following. Music only he could hear. One arm hung stiff at his side while the other moved loosely through the air. Almost elegant, almost. But something about it felt wrong immediately, not scary, just wrong. Like watching a human being imitate another human being and getting small details slightly incorrect. He spun once beneath the streetlight, slowly, then stopped, completely still. I remember laughing quietly to myself, not because it was funny, because uncomfortable people laugh when their brain is trying to reduce tension. Dude's probably high, I muttered. My voice sounded too loud out there. The man didn't react, didn't stumble, didn't sway. He just stood there beneath that yellow light, with his head tilted slightly downward, then he lifted it. And even from that distance, Abby could tell he was smiling. Not a normal smile, too wide, way too wide. The kind of smile people make as a joke when they're trying to look creepy in photos. Except this didn't feel like a joke. The city suddenly felt quieter, I slowed down without realizing it. The man moved again, one step then another, not toward me exactly. More like sideways, gliding diagonally across the sidewalk with those same strange rhythmic movements, like he was trying to dance and walk at the same time. My stomach tightened a little. I looked around instinctively. No cars nearby, no people, no sound except distant traffic and the faint hiss of tires somewhere blocks away. Then the man spun again, faster this time. His coat flared outward slightly as he turned beneath the streetlight. And I swear to God, he never stopped looking at me. Not once, even while turning, even while moving. His eyes stayed locked onto mine the entire time. That was the first moment my body started warning me. You know that feeling, when your instincts notice danger before your thoughts catch up. My hand suddenly felt cold inside my hoodie pocket. I told myself to relax. People in cities are weird, that's all. Maybe he was performing, maybe he was mentally ill. Maybe he was just some guy messing around at 2 in the morning. But then he started coming toward me, still dancing, still smiling. Slowly, not rushing, not threatening. That somehow made it worse. His shoes scraped softly against the wet pavement. Tiny sounds, too rhythmic, too controlled. And the closer he got, less human, the movements looked. His limbs bent strangely, not broken, not unnatural exactly, just delayed, like certain parts of his body reacted half a second too late after the others moved. I took a step backward. He immediately stopped moving. The silence hit me hard then, heavy silence, the kind where even your breathing starts sounding invasive. The man tilted his head the other direction now, still smiling, still staring. Then he lifted one hand slowly into the air, not waving, not pointing, just raising it gently beside his face, like he was acknowledging me. Like we knew each other. My pulse started hammering in my ears. I remember thinking, don't panic, just keep walking, so I did. I turned away from him and kept moving down the sidewalk, trying to act casual, even though every muscle in my body suddenly felt too tight. I told myself not to look back. I lasted maybe 5 seconds. Then I glanced over my shoulder. The man was still there, except now, he was much closer than he should been, standing directly beneath the next streetlight, smiling, completely still. And I never heard him run. That was the moment I realized something was deeply, deeply wrong. I kept walking, not fast. That's important. People always imagine fear as screaming and sprinting and looking over your shoulder every 2 seconds. Real fear usually starts smaller than that. Smaller and uglier, it starts with denial. You convince yourself you're overreacting because the alternative is admitting something is seriously wrong. So I kept walking, hands in my hoodie pocket, eyes forward, trying to look like a tired guy heading home after work, instead of someone whose nervous system had just started screaming at him. The wet sidewalk reflected the streetlights in broken strips of yellow and white. Somewhere above me, an elevated train rattled through the dark for a few seconds before fading again. The city still felt empty, not peaceful empty. There's a difference. I passed a bus stop with cracked plexiglass walls covered in old concert posters and water damage. One ad panel inside kept flickering between images because the digital display was broken. A smiling woman selling perfume, steep black screen, then her face again. For some reason, I hated that thing immediately. I glanced behind me again. The man was still there, farther back now, but still following. Still moving in those slow twisting steps beneath the streetlights. Smile visible even from that distance. I looked away quickly this time. My pulse was climbing higher. Don't engage. Don't stare. Don't escalate. That's what my brain kept repeating. I pulled my phone out again, mostly because I needed something normal to look at. 2:17 a.m. No signal bars for a second. Then they came back. I opened maps, even though I already knew the route home. Just seeing the little blue dot moving normally across the screen helped calm me down a little. Rational things. Street names, battery percentages, traffic icons, things that made sense. Behind me I heard it again. Leather soles against wet concrete. Steady rhythm, not speeding up, not slowing down, matching me. I crossed the street without thinking too hard about it. The crosswalk timer flashed red numbers overhead. 11, 12, 13. The electronic chirping sound echoed weirdly loud through the intersection. Halfway across, I glanced back again. The man had crossed too, not at the crosswalk, not normally. He moved diagonally through the empty street in those same bizarre swaying motions, coat shifting around his legs as he twisted unnaturally beneath the traffic lights. And he was closer, much closer, close enough now that I could see details, dark suit, old-fashioned, almost black gloves, fuck fees pale beneath the streetlight, and that smile, Jesus Christ. It stretched too far across his face. Not physically impossible, just strained, like someone holding an expression long after the emotion behind it had died. But the eyes were the worst part. They didn't match the smile at all. They looked exhausted, flat, dead tired, like he hadn't slept in years. I felt adrenaline hit my stomach hard then. That cold sinking sensation right before panic starts trying to take over. I turned forward again immediately and picked up my pace. Not running. Not yet. My apartment was only another 6 or 7 blocks away. I remember trying to calculate stupid things to stay calm. How long would it take me to get inside? Was the lobby door still broken? Did I leave my keys in my backpack or jacket pocket? Could I call someone once I got closer to home? Normal thoughts. Tiny thoughts. The kind people cling to when their brain is trying very hard not to spiral. Behind me, still there, still matching me, I passed an alleyway between 2 old brick buildings. Dark enough that the light barely reached inside, and for half a second, Abby thought I saw movement in there too. Not him, something else. I turned my head sharply toward it. Nothing. Just dumpsters, steam, shadows. But when I looked back toward the sidewalk, the smiling man was suddenly standing still again, directly under a flickering street lamp, watching me. Too close. Way too close. My chest tightened instantly, because I hadn't heard him gaining on me. Not once. No sprinting, no fast footsteps, nothing. 1 second he'd been half a block behind me. Now he was maybe 30 feet away, and smiling wider, the street light above him buzzed softly. His head twitched slightly sideways, not naturally, like a puppet receiving a signal. Then he laughed quickly. Not a normal laugh either, it sounded breathless. Dry, like someone forcing air through a smile that never closed. Heh! Just one sound. But hearing it out there in the empty street made every hair on my arms stand up instantly. I started walking faster. Actually fast now. My backpack bounced against my shoulder blades as I moved. I risked another glance behind me. He was moving again. Dancing. That's still the only word I can use for it. Not sprinting, not chasing. Dancing toward me in these long, twisting glides that somehow kept covering too much distance. 1 foot crossing over the other, head tilted, smile locked in place. I nearly slipped on the wet pavement, turning another corner. My breathing was getting louder now. Too loud. The city suddenly felt wrong around me. Not empty anymore. Watching every dark apartment window, every parked car, every alley entrance, like the whole street had gone still just to observe whatever this thing was doing to me. I reached for my phone again. My fingers felt clumsy and numb. I opened my contacts, hovered over 911, stopped. And this is the part people always judge when I tell the story. Why didn't you call the police? Because what exactly was I supposed to say? There's a smiling guy dancing behind me. Even in that moment, part of me still wanted reality to make sense. Part of me still believed there had to be a normal explanation. Then I heard him speak behind me, closer than before. Very close. Long night? His voice was soft, polite almost. Better than I expected. I froze mid-step. Every instinct in my body screamed not to turn around. But I did anyway. Slowly, he stood beneath the glow of a parking garage light now, maybe 15 feet away, motionless, smiling directly at me. Up close, his face looked worse somehow, skin stretched tight around his mouth, cheeks trembling slightly from holding that expression too long. And his eyes, God, his eyes looked terrified, not angry, not excited, terrified, as if something behind the smile was begging for help while the rest of him kept grinning anyway. Rainwater dripped softly from the edge of the parking structure above us. Dut kicka dut kick. The smiling man tilted his head slowly. "You look tired," he said, same gentle voice, like a concerned stranger making conversation at a gas station. But his mouth never moved correctly with the words. That's what broke me. The timing was off. The smile stayed too wide while he talked. Like the human face underneath wasn't connected properly anymore. I took another step backward, then another. My breathing turned shallow, fast. The smiling man's shoulders twitched once beneath his coat, almost like disappointment. Then, without warning, he began spinning toward me again, slowly at first, one twisting step, then another, smile widening, gloves flexing softly at his sides, and that dry little laugh returning under his breath. I turned and ran, actually ran this time, shoes slamming against wet pavement, backpack jerking violently against my shoulders, cold air tearing into my lungs. I heard nothing behind me at first, which somehow terrified me more. No footsteps, no shouting, no pursuit. Just my own breathing and the distant howl of traffic somewhere beyond the empty blocks around me. Then, right behind me, the sound stayed behind me. Close, too close, not running. Still never running. I bolted across another intersection, nearly slipping on the slick pavement as the traffic light above flashed from yellow to red. My lungs burned instantly. Cold air ripped through my throat with every breath, but the footsteps behind me stayed calm, measured, almost patient. That was the part destroying my mind the fastest. If someone chases you, your brain understands the rules: run, hide, fight, escape. But this thing, this man, moved like he already knew where I was going, like the chase itself didn't matter. I risked a glance over my shoulder. Big mistake, he was there. Not sprinting, not even walking fast, just twisting forward beneath the streetlights in those same awful gliding motions, smiling the entire time while his body swayed unnaturally through the empty street. And somehow, he was keeping up with me perfectly. I turned forward again immediately. My heartbeat had become deafening now. Every pulse slammed against the inside of my skull, hard enough to make my vision blur around the edges. I needed people, light, noise, anything human. Up ahead, I spotted a 24-hour convenience store on the corner. Small place wedged beneath old apartments. Neon open sign glowing weakly in the window. Thank God. I sprinted toward it. The bell above the door rattled violently when I shoved my way inside. Warm air hit my face immediately, along with the smell of burnt coffee and old fryer grease. A baseball game played quietly on a tiny television mounted in the corner behind the counter. Normal everything suddenly looked painfully normal. A tired cashier glanced up from his phone. Mid-50s maybe. Reading glasses. Gray hoodie. He looked annoyed more than concerned. "You good, man?" I bent forward slightly with my hands on my knees trying to catch my breath. "Yeah," I lied instantly. My chest hurt. I looked back toward the glass windows facing the street, sidewalk, rainwater glimmering beneath streetlights. No sign of him. I actually laughed once under my breath. Short, nervous, the cashier gave me a strange look. "You sure you're okay?" "Yeah," I repeated. "Some guy was following me, I think." The cashier shrugged. "Welcome to Chicago." Then he went back to his phone. I remember feeling stupid almost immediately, embarrassed, like I'd let exhaustion and paranoia get inside my head. Maybe the smiling was exaggerated by distance. Maybe the movements only looked strange because I was tired. Maybe the guy was mentally ill but harmless. My breathing slowly started calming down. I grabbed a bottle of water from a cooler near the back wall. My hands were still shaking slightly. Cold condensation slid across my fingers. I walked toward the counter. That's when the cashier frowned suddenly, not at me, past me, toward the window behind my shoulder. His expression changed in a way I still think about sometimes. Not fear exactly, confusion first, then discomfort, then something else. He leaned slightly sideways, trying to see around me. "You know that guy." Every muscle in my body locked instantly. I turned slowly. The smiling man stood outside the store, completely motionless beneath the neon glow. Rain dripped from the edge of the awning above him. His face looked pale blue beneath the lights. And he was smiling directly at me through the glass, not blinking, not moving, just staring. The cashier let out a quiet breath. "Man, what the hell?" I swallowed hard. "You see him too?" "Yeah, I see him." The cashier straightened slightly now, eyes narrowing toward the window. "But he looks messed up." The smiling man lifted one gloved hand slowly onto the glass, not pounding, not scratching, just resting it there gently, palm flat against the window, smile widening. The cashier muttered something under his breath. Then the smiling man tilted his head and started moving again, not toward the entrance, sideways, sliding slowly past the storefront window while maintaining eye contact with me the entire time, like he was, presenting himself, showing me he could keep following whenever he wanted. The cashier shook his head. "Nah, nope." He reached beneath the counter slightly, probably for a bat or panic button. I never found out, because the smiling man suddenly disappeared past the edge of the window, just gone from sight. The silence inside the store thickened instantly. Even the baseball game sounded distant now. I stared toward the entrance, waiting. The cashier stared too. Nobody moved. 5 seconds. 10, 15. Nothing. Then, the bell above the front door jingled softly. Both of us flinched. But nobody came inside. The door hadn't opened. The bell had moved on its own, a tiny metallic jingle echoing through the store. The cashier looked at me now, actually nervous. "You got people messing with you or something?" I don't know, and I meant it, because something deep in my gut had already started realizing this wasn't normal human behavior anymore. The cashier stepped around the counter carefully and looked outside, Empry sidewalk, Empry street. No smiling man, no pedestrians, nothing. He looked back at me. Guy probably left. But he didn't sound convinced. I paid for the water mostly because I didn't know what else to do. My apartment was still 4 blocks away. 4 blocks suddenly felt impossible. The cashier hesitated before speaking again. "You want me to call somebody?" I almost said yes, almost. But then embarrassment crawled back into my brain again, because what would I even explain? Some smiling guy dancing outside? It sounded insane now that fluorescent lights and normal voices surrounded me again, so I shook my head. "I'm good." The cashier clearly didn't believe me, neither did I. I pushed open the store door carefully. The wet night air hit my face again. Cold, the city felt quieter now than before, like the store had only been a temporary interruption in something waiting outside. I stepped onto the sidewalk slowly, looked both directions, nothing. No movement. No smiling man, just distant traffic and flickering lights reflecting across rain-soaked streets. I started walking again, faster this time. My apartment building was close now. I could almost picture the lobby lights in my head. One more block, then another. I kept checking behind me every few seconds. Nothing, no footsteps, no twisted dancing silhouette, no smile. Part of me started believing maybe he'd finally left. Then I reached the next intersection and froze. Across the street, standing beneath the walk signal, was the smiling man waiting for me. My entire body went cold instantly because there was no possible way he could gotten there. Not without passing the convenience store windows, not without being seen. But there he stood anyway, motionless beneath the blinking white crosswalk symbol. Smile stretched wide head, tilted slightly downward, like he'd been waiting patiently for me to catch up. Then the walk signal changed and the smiling man began crossing toward me. Not dancing this time. Worse, now he moved completely normally. And somehow, that terrified me more. Because the moment he started walking like a real person, it felt like he had finally decided to stop pretending. The smiling man crossed the street slowly. No dancing, no twisting, no strange gliding movements. Just walking, and somehow that made everything worse. Because now I could finally see what was wrong with him clearly. His body moved normally, but the smile stayed exactly the same. Too wide, too rigid, like it had been nailed into place. Streetlight reflections shimmered across the wet pavement between us as he approached the intersection. His black gloves hung calmly at his sides. His shoes clicked softly against the crosswalk paint. Click, 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 click. Human footsteps, finally human. And that terrified me more than the dancing ever did, because it felt intentional now. Like the bizarre movements before had all been an act, a performance. Something he did because he enjoyed watching people panic. The walk signal began flashing red above him. He kept coming anyway. My body locked up completely for a second. That deep animal paralysis humans get right before panic overwhelms logic. I couldn't breathe correctly anymore. My lungs kept trying to pull in too much air too quickly. The smiling man's eyes stayed fixed on mine as he crossed beneath the traffic lights, not blinking. Never blinking. I backed away slowly. One step, then another. He matched me perfectly. Still smiling, still walking, still calm. That calmness was poisoning everything. If he had screamed, or threatened me, or acted aggressive, my brain could have categorized him. Danger, predator, maniac. But this felt wrong in a way I still don't know how to explain. Like reality itself was slightly tilted around him. The smiling man stopped in the middle of the street. A car approached somewhere behind him. Headlights washed over his body for half a second, and I finally saw his face clearly. God, his skin looked stretched too tightly across his cheeks, like smiling physically hurt him. His eyes were bloodshot and wet, not emotional strained, like he hadn't closed them in days. And his mouth, it trembled slightly at the corners from exhaustion, like muscles pushed far beyond what they were supposed to do. Then the passing headlights disappeared, and for one impossible moment, his smile vanished, not slowly, not naturally. It simply dropped, like someone flipping off a light switch. His face underneath looked horrified, absolutely horrified. I froze, because I swear, for less than a second, he looked like a man trapped inside his own body. Then the smile snapped back instantly, wider than before. The smiling man tilted his head sharply sideways, too sharply, neck bending farther than it should have, and he whispered something. I couldn't hear it clearly over the distant traffic, but I caught two words: "Don't stop." Then he started dancing again, violently this time, jerking sideways through the intersection with sudden twitching movements. that no longer looked even remotely human. His limbs swung too loosely, too fast, coat whipping around his body while his grin stretched impossibly wide beneath the streetlights. I turned and ran harder than I ever have in my life. My apartment was close, 1 block, maybe less. My shoes slammed against wet concrete so hard pain shot through my knees. My backpack bounced violently against my spine. Breathing became raw, ragged. Every inhale cutting into my chest. Behind me, nothing. No footsteps, no sounds. That silence nearly broke me, because it meant one of two things. Either he'd stopped following, or he didn't need to anymore. I rounded the final corner toward my apartment building, and my stomach dropped instantly. The front lobby lights were off. Completely dark. No. I sprinted toward the entrance anyway. Old brick building, narrow windows, buzzing security door that almost never worked properly. Rainwater dripped steadily from the fire escape above me. Dutik. My hands shook violently, digging through my pockets for keys. Wallet pawn, loose receipts. No keys. Come on. Panic hit full force then. Real panic. The kind that strips language away from your thoughts. I dropped my backpack onto the wet ground and ripped it open desperately. My fingers barely worked anymore. Everything felt numb. I finally found the keys tangled beneath a charger cable. The metal slipped twice before I got it into the lock. Behind me, silence. Still silence. Too much silence. I shoved the door open and practically fell into the dark lobby. The motion sensor lights didn't activate immediately. For one horrible second, the entire hallway stayed black. Then flick, dim yellow lights buzzed overhead. I slammed the door shut behind me and locked it. My breathing echoed through the tiny lobby. The old elevator sat at the far end of the hallway beside a row of mailboxes. Its digital floor display glowed faint red 7. Someone upstairs using it. I lived on the 5th floor. No way I was waiting. I lunged toward the stairwell door instead. That's when I heard it. 3 soft knocks. Behind me. On the lobby glass. Knock. Every muscle in my body tightened so hard it hurt. Slowly Abe turned around. The smiling man stood outside the glass entrance door, rain sliding down his face, smile still locked in place. One gloved hand resting gently against the doorframe, watching me. Completely still. The streetlight behind him cast long shadows across the sidewalk. And somehow, he looked taller now. Not huge, just slightly wrong. Like proportions around him weren't behaving correctly anymore. I stumbled backward toward the stairwell. The smiling man tapped the glass softly again. Knock. Then he mouthed something, silently. I couldn't hear the words, but I read them perfectly. You forgot something. My stomach twisted violently because my backpack was still outside, right beside him. The smiling man slowly crouched down beside it, never breaking eye contact. One gloved hand unzipped the bag carefully, almost politely. My chest tightened so hard I thought I might pass out. Inside that backpack was my apartment key fob, my work ID, my address. Everything. The smiling man reached inside slowly, then stopped. His smile twitched violently for the first time. Not wider, worse, unstable. As if something underneath his skin was fighting against it. The lights inside the lobby flickered once. Dark. Light again. And suddenly, he was standing directly against the glass. Too fast. No movement between positions. 1 second crouched beside the backpack. Next second inches from the door, smiling directly into the lobby. My entire nervous system collapsed. I shoved open the stairwell door and ran upward 2 steps at a time. The concrete stairwell echoed with my breathing. Floor 2, floor 3. My legs burned instantly. I nearly slipped grabbing the rail at the 4th floor landing. Then below me, the lobby door buzzed open. A long, metallic click echoing upward through the stairwell. I stopped moving. Every drop of blood in my body suddenly felt cold, because I knew, absolutely knew, I had locked that door. Then came the sound, not running, not footsteps, dancing, slowly ascending the stairs beneath me. Step, step. Soft laughter drifting upward through concrete walls. Closer, closer, closer. I started crying without realizing it. Not loud, just panicked tears spilling down my face while I forced my body upward toward the 5th floor. My apartment door sat halfway down the hallway once I burst out of the stairwell. I fumbled my keys so badly they clattered across the carpet. Behind me, stairwell door downstairs creaked open slowly. I could hear him now, actually hear him breathing, uneven wet. Like smiling that hard was tearing something inside his throat apart. I grabbed the keys again with shaking fingers and jammed them into the lock. Wrong key again. Please. The stairwell door at the end of the hallway opened wider darkness inside. Then one gloved hand slowly wrapped around the edge of the doorway. The smiling man leaned out sideways into the hall, still smiling, still dancing slightly in place, watching me fail to open my own door. And then, for the very first time, he stopped looking amused. He looked hungry. And that was the moment I realized he had never been trying to scare me. He'd been waiting for me to let him in. My apartment door finally opened. I fell inside so hard my shoulder slammed against the kitchen counter. The door nearly swung shut on its own behind me. I grabbed it at the last second and shoved every lock across with shaking hands. Deadbolt turn lock, top latch. Kmick click, kmick click, kmick click. Then silence complete to silence. I backed away from the door slowly, breathing so hard it felt like my lungs were collapsing inward. My entire body shook uncontrollably now. Not dramatic shaking. Tiny violent tremors deep in my arms and stomach that I couldn't stop. The apartment suddenly felt too small, too thin, like the walls weren't enough anymore. Outside the door, nothing. No footsteps, no laughter, no movement in the hallway. I stared at the peephole for almost a full minute before forcing myself toward it. Every instinct screamed not to look, but fear always wants confirmation. I pressed my eye against the cold glass. The hallway was empty, completely empty. Dim apartment lights buzzed softly overhead. Old beige carpet. Water stains on the ceiling near the stairwell. Nothing else. The smiling man was gone. I remember sliding down against the front door after that, hands over my face, trying to breathe normally again. My phone buzzed suddenly in my pocket and I almost screamed. Just a weather alert, heavy rainfall warning until 4 a.m. I laughed weakly. That ugly, exhausted laugh people make right before their nervous system crashes. Then I realized something. My backpack, still downstairs, along with my work ID, my keys, my address. The realization hit me slowly, cold heavy. I didn't sleep that night. Not even close. I sat on the floor beside the couch, with every light in the apartment turned on, and an aluminum baseball bat across my lap like that would somehow matter. Outside my windows, the city remained soaked in rain and yellow streetlight haze. Every passing pair of headlights made my chest tighten. Every sound in the hallway made my pulse spike. Around 4:30 a.m., someone laughed outside, softly, not loud. Just faint enough that I couldn't tell if it came from the street below or directly outside my apartment door. Heh! I stopped breathing entirely, waited. Nothing after that. No knock. No footsteps. Just silence again. Morning finally came gray and miserable. I called in sick to work for the first time in almost 2 years. Then I spent nearly 20 minutes standing inside my apartment, staring at the front door before forcing myself to leave. The hallway looked normal again. That somehow felt insulting. I took the elevator down this time because I physically could not make myself walk near the stairwell. The lobby was empty. Rainwater still streaked the glass entrance doors, and my backpack sat exactly where I'd left it. Right outside, undisturbed. I approached it slowly. Every nerve in my body screamed at me not to touch it. But I did. The zipper was partially open. Inside, everything remained there. Wallet caps, work badge, .aim charger. Nothing stolen. Nothing damaged. Except for one thing, folded carefully inside the front pocket, was a small piece of paper I had never seen before. My hand started shaking again before I even opened it. There was only one sentence written inside, black ink. Messy handwriting. You look better when you smile. I threw up in the lobby trash can almost immediately after reading it. The landlord checked security footage later that afternoon, or at least he tried to. That part still bothers me. From 2:11 a.m. until nearly 3:00 a.m., the lobby cameras showed nothing unusual. No smiling man. No figure outside the building. No one entering through the front door, nothing. Just me, running inside alone, locking the door. Then sprinting toward the stairwell while apparently panicking at absolutely nothing. The landlord actually asked if I was on drugs. I moved out 3 weeks later, couldn't stay there anymore. Couldn't walk those streets anymore either. For a long time after that, I avoided downtown completely after dark. I started taking rideshares everywhere, even short distances. People laughed about it sometimes. Coworkers especially, until they noticed how serious I was, how I physically stopped functioning whenever someone smiled too long during conversations. That became the worst part, not the fear, the smiling. Once your brain connects something human to danger, it never fully disconnects again. Cashiers, strangers, people smiling on trains. People smiling too hard in family photos. My stomach still tightens every single time. And sometimes, very rarely, I still see him. Not clearly, never fully, just reflections mostly. A pale face beneath streetlights. A figure standing too still at the far end of empty sidewalks. Once, about a year later, I saw someone dancing strangely across a parking garage rooftop at almost 2 in the morning. I left before they could look up at me. Maybe it wasn't him. Maybe none of it was real. Exhaustion does terrible things to the human mind. Sleep deprivation, stress, isolation. That's what I kept telling myself for years. Then last winter, AB got proof. I was sitting inside a diner near Milwaukee Avenue during a snowstorm. Late night again. Couldn't sleep. The place was mostly empty except for one old couple near the window and a teenager wiping tables behind the counter. I remember staring absent-mindedly outside while snow drifted across the streetlights. Then I saw him, across the road, standing perfectly still beside a bus stop, dark coat, black gloves. Smiling, watching the diner, my blood turned to ice instantly. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. The waitress noticed me staring, then she looked outside too, and her face changed immediately. That's the part that destroyed me, because she saw him too. She whispered, "What the hell is wrong with that guy?" The smiling man slowly lifted one hand toward the diner window, not waving, acknowledging, like he recognized me, like we shared something now. Then the streetlight above him flickered once. Darkness swallowed the sidewalk for less than a second, and when the light returned, he was gone. No footprints in the snow, no movement anywhere. Nothing. Just an empty bus stop under falling snow. The waitress locked the diner door after that without saying a word. Neither of us mentioned him again. I still don't walk alone after 2 a.m. anymore. Maybe that sounds irrational, maybe it is. But every city changes after a certain hour. The streets get quieter. The lights feel farther apart. And sometimes, if you're unlucky, you notice someone smiling at you from the other end of the block, standing beneath a streetlight waiting, perfectly still. like they've been there much longer than you realize. So if you ever see a tall man dancing alone in an empty street late at night, don't laugh, don't stare. And whatever you do, don't smile back, because some things out there smile when they're hungry. Sweet dreams, if you can.